I want to talk about the Russia-Ukraine potential war and why is it causing oil prices to go up? And what do I think is going to happen? I mean, is Russia going to invade Ukraine? And so I've read a lot of news, so you don't have to. So if you like this channel, please subscribe. I talk a lot about oil and gas, and I have more of an oil and gas energy perspective on what's going on in the world. And so my focus right now is to talk about Putin, talk about Ukraine. Why is Putin wanting to invade? How's that affect oil prices? Now, here's my opinion about it. I'm 50-50 whether is Putin really bluffing here? Is it just to get attention for his narcissistic mind? Is it just to negotiate? Is it to cause oil prices to go up? I don't know. Okay. I know for a fact that for every dollar that oil prices go up, he's making an extra $10 million a day, $300 million a month. So he's making billions and billions of dollars from this move. Oil prices are jacking up while all along he's selling energy to the world. Okay. So if you sold sprockets and one move caused your sprockets to be even more valuable, putting billions of dollars in your pocket, hey, why not? And then on top of that, it benefits him because the pressure he puts on Ukraine, there are things that he wants Ukraine to do. And so I'm going to explain that as we go here. Right now, WTI crude is $91 a barrel, Brent crude $93.75. Okay. Now, cutting Russia's oil flow to Europe would be a disaster. So what I mean by what they're talking about here, in the event they go to war, Putin and Ukraine, they're going to be put very heavy blows to his economy by putting sanctions on Russia, on Putin, preventing them from being able to sell energy. And his biggest buyer is Europe. Okay. Now, let's look here. A plunge in Russian oil exports to Europe would also be a very bullish factor for oil prices, which could cause oil prices to exceed $100 per barrel in case of conflict in Ukraine, analysts say. Now, still a major disruption of oil flows from Russia to Europe is highly unlikely. Okay, so here's the deal. In the event that if Putin decides to go to war with Ukraine, it will be a devastating blow to his economy because they'll put massive sanctions on him, preventing him from being able to sell oil. And the only people that benefit from this would be OPEC, Saudi Arabia, all Middle East, Iran, all these surrounding countries selling their oil for absorbent amounts of money, $100, $120, $135 a barrel, like it was in the days of Bush and Obama. Okay. And while Putin's going to war, spending billions on a war, putting his country and his people at risk, his economy falls apart. So this is a very, he's playing a very careful game of chess here. Okay. Now, this map here, what I want you to see on this map. Okay. So if you look here, all of these in yellow is basically, the darker yellows, the lighter yellows. These are everybody that's a part of the European Union. Okay. Now the European Union is more for finances. Okay. Banking, imports, exports, trade. Okay. And so they're a conglomerate that works well together to help keep finances flowing, exports, imports, and what have you. Okay. Now Russia is not a part of the European Union, but as you can see here, neither is Belarus, neither is Ukraine, and Russia is not a part of it. Now, Russia is surrounded by the European Union and he hates it. The regulations, it makes it more difficult to sell oil, sell military equipment, sell weapons and imports and move freely. Okay. And so in the European Union can sanction Putin, prevent them from doing business with the European Union. And Putin does not like to be controlled, which is simply why he does the things that he's doing. Okay, so as you can see here, he's surrounded. So get that picture in your mind. He is surrounded by the European Union. All these countries are part of it. And he does not. He made it very clear, I do not want Ukraine to be a part of the EU. He also said, I do not want Ukraine to be a part of NATO. Now, here's why. Okay, now if you look at all of the light blue countries, okay, the light blue countries, let's see, the light blue countries simply means that it's part of NATO. Okay, NATO is simply a joined conglomeration of military power. So in the event that Romania was attacked by Putin or Russia, American troops would immediately deploy to Romania and protect them. Okay. So America has the ability to put military forces in Germany and Poland, anywhere in light blue, because it's a part of NATO. Okay. It's a joint task force of military that protects countries that are part of NATO, and they could exchange military intelligence, protection, and what have you. Okay, and so Ukraine was actually on the chopping block to be a part of NATO. In fact, there was a previous. I'll talk more about that later. And so, as you can see here, Russia is surrounded by NATO. Okay. And so NATO continues to expand. If NATO was in Ukraine, that means we could put American military right on the border here, bordering Russia. Putin does not want that. Okay. He's being painted into a corner here, and it behooves him to do whatever it takes to prevent this from happening. Okay. Now, here's some more recent, all this is recent news, but this is just today. Although he has said a diplomatic resolution is still possible. This is Biden. On Thursday, he called the threat of conflict very high and that he expects Russia to invade Ukraine in the next several days. Now, I have a problem with what Biden is saying, because really he wants to take the attention off himself, his failed presidency, his failed energy policies. He wants to blame Putin. He wants to blame this war on high gas prices. But really, it's because of his failed campaign to bolster green energy to replace fossil fuels. He hasn't been able to do that. And not only that, I mean, we're at almost 100 million barrels a day of demand, pre-COVID levels, almost hitting levels that we have never hit before. We are using more fossil fuels than ever before, and none of his policies has helped it. Okay, what does that tell you? He's the most greenest president that has ever been in power in America, and we're using more fossil fuels than we're on the path to use more fossil fuels than we've ever been before. And we're spending more money on gasoline than we have in a long time. It just makes him look really bad. Okay, so of course he wants to blame Putin. Of course he wants the world to say, hey, things are escalating and what have you. And so on Friday, the leader of Russian-backed separatists in eastern Ukraine called for his supporters to begin a mass evacuation to Russia, claiming Ukraine was readying for an invasion of the region. Ukraine immediately denied the claim. Okay. And so there are a lot of Biden is having people from Ukraine evacuate, Americans evacuate. Russian separatists are making claims that they're asking their people to evacuate. Now, this could be posturing, making people believe like, hey, there's war is imminent. And this is what Putin wants everyone to believe. It's part of his plan to take control of Ukraine, what's happening. Russian President Vladimir Putin Friday warned the situation is escalating. Okay, so of course Putin wants the world to know or to think that, hey, war is imminent, it's escalating, tensions are rising. Okay, and the reason why he wants that is because Putin simply does not want Ukraine to be a part of NATO, and he's putting demands and pressure on NATO, on America, and on Ukraine. I will pull out my troops, but Ukraine does not become part of NATO. Okay. And so how joining NATO and the EU became Ukraine's unattainable dream. All right. In 2019, Ukraine even enshrined its will to join the West in its constitution. Okay. Ukraine will join the EU. Ukraine will join NATO, declared Jubilant. So Jubilant is basically saying, hey, listen, Putin, we're going to join the EU and we are going to join NATO. Okay. And he's just throwing it in his face. All right. And so Putin knows that Ukraine does have this option. And they've already made the threats that this is what we're going to do. Okay. And so Ukraine is really upset with Putin for taking over Crimea, and they are making threats, say, hey, we're going to be a part of NATO, because, in other words, Ukraine can't protect themselves. But if you had American NATO forces, NATO conjoined forces in there, man, they'd be a serious threat, and Putin does not want that. Okay. Now, if you look here, this is a map with all of the military of Russia, all these green circles here. So as you can see here, Ukraine is surrounded. And if you notice here, a lot of the military presence is in Belarus. Okay. Now, I want to talk about the relationship between Belarus and Putin. Now, bottom line, so how come Putin has the ability to put a mass hundreds of thousands of military troops on the border of Ukraine inside of another country, Belarus? Well, here's the deal. Okay. If you read, let's read some news here, and I'll explain what I'm talking about. Traditionally, Russia is both our key trade partner now. Belarus is talking right now. Okay, the country of Belarus is saying this. Russia is both our key trade partner and a major export market for Belarusian manufacturers. In 2020, the mutual trade amounted to 29.5 billion, with exports to Russia reaching 13.1 billion and imports from Russia and 16.4 billion. Russia accounts for 47.9% of Belarusian foreign trade. Now, bottom line, 50% of the foreign trade comes from Russia. So it behooves Belarus to be good allies with Putin. Okay. Now, the president of Belarus was in a closed door meeting with Putin. Nobody knows what they talked about, but he received a check for $1.5 billion from Putin. Okay. What the trade terms was, what that money was for, nobody knows. Okay. Now, Putin, he knows how to wine and dine a man. The president is a man of Belarus. He's a man. He's a human. He has temptations. If you could imagine being in the situation, you're sitting with Putin. He's got all of his military, some very powerful people, some of the smartest people in the world, sitting in the room, military power. He is not only afraid of what Putin could do to him and his family and his country, but he's kind of excited too. He's like, wow, I could either be on the side of fear or I could be on Putin's side. He'll give me billions of dollars. He'll cause billions of dollars to flow into my country. I'll have protection from him. He'll show me how to skirt the sanctions or evade the whole control of the EU, of America, of NATO, because man, it's the same reason why people in America don't like running their own business, because government overreach is getting worse in the control, and you have to fill out all this paperwork and you have to pay all these taxes and all those things. But imagine not having to do all that just by shaking hands with the devil. And who knows? I mean, this president of Belarus, he's probably has all these beautiful women from Russia. Just, you know what's happening. I mean, he's getting billions of dollars. He's getting wined and dined. He gets whatever he wants from Putin. Okay, whatever his temptation, whatever his fantasy. Okay, and he walks away from that meeting feeling like $1 million and with even more power and control, and who knows how much money he's walking away with. Okay, and so here's a meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Alexander, which is the president, and so there is a huge uprising against that president because they disagreed with the relationship between him and Putin and everything else, and Putin comes in to save the day, and he wrote a multi-billion-dollar check to this gentleman to help him out. So anyways, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. And so here's the deal. In my research, what I really wanted to figure out, okay, is Putin really going to invade? Okay, so history repeats itself and history speaks for itself. Okay, so on the 27th of February, Russian armed forces seized the building of the Supreme Council of Crimea. Okay, Crimea is in fact a Ukraine country. I mean, it's part of Ukraine. Okay. It's like Texas is a part of America. Crimea was part of Ukraine. Okay. And Russia took it over in 2014. They seized the building of the Supreme Council of Crimea and the building of the Council of Ministers. The parliament held an emergency session. So, in other words, they sent a bunch of military forces inside of a governing building in Crimea. And then the parliament held an emergency session and voted to terminate the Crimea government and replace Prime Minister Anatoly with Sergei Eskanov. Okay, in other words, they went into Crimea in a government building. They had a vote. 96% of the people voted to become part of the Russian Confederation, and then they removed the ones in power and propped up their own guys in power. Okay, kind of like what happened in Syria. And so, bottom line, if they did that to Crimea, why wouldn't they do that to the rest of Ukraine? They already took a part of Ukraine, and although America, NATO, the EU, surrounding countries, they all condemned this action, but now he has access to Crimea. Now it's a place to where he could put his troops, travel, do trade, business, whatever he wants there, and nobody has done anything about it. Okay, so he's already done this before. Okay, now Ukraine would be a much bigger, more serious escalation, more serious situation, but he's already done this before, guys. Okay. Oil tanks after Russia pulls troops from Ukrainian border. And so I've already discussed this, already talked about it. And so obviously oil did not tank. Oil prices are still well over $90 a barrel. But do you see the news? There was talk of pulling Ukraine troops away from the Ukraine border. But in fact, after looking further into this, they did realize that actually there was more troops going to the Ukraine border, but oil prices did drop. And so it just goes to show you how powerful the news is and how powerful this move, this prop of what Putin is actually doing here and the effects on oil and energy. U.S. and Russian officials clash over status of Russian troops near Ukraine. I already talked about that. And so Biden sent 2 officials to Saudi Arabia to ask the kingdom to produce more oil, fearing a Russian attack would send energy prices soaring. Listen, he's pushing a narrative. Biden is pushing a narrative. Listen, guys, if oil prices go up, it wasn't my fault. Now, most people, most average Americans, they don't pay attention to the news. They read headlines, they watch the news, but bottom line, they forget why oil prices are high. Now, if you're paying attention, it's very simple, okay? Donald Trump caused oil prices to average $50 a barrel. Why? Because he drilled a lot of American oil. We went from 6 million under Bush to 13 million barrels a day under Donald Trump. Biden comes in office. Oil prices drop tremendously. Biden comes in office. Oil production drops tremendously, and oil prices hit upwards of over 90-something dollars a barrel. As we're under Trump, we had moments where oil prices were 30. Okay, and so his green energy initiative, him putting sanctions on American oil. Well, I say sanctions, but really he's putting mandates on local oil companies to drill less, to spend less, and to reduce carbon emissions, okay? But bottom line, there's an underinvestment in oil. Bottom line, we're not producing enough oil. And because of that, that's why energy prices are up. But he wants to put all the blame on Russia. And many Americans, many people in the world actually believe what he's saying because they don't remember the news. They don't actually understand energy. And so when they're paying these exorbitant prices for energy, their gas bill, their electricity bill, their oil prices and what have you, they automatically think, oh, it's because of Putin. You see what they're doing here? So, all right, guys, I'm Sean Pruitt, president of Kingdom Exploration. If you like this channel, please subscribe, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.